I, 28M, recently discovered something that completely destroyed my relationship with my father, and I need outside perspective on whether I'm handling this right. This is going to be long because there's a lot of background needed to understand everything. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old after my mom caught my dad cheating. I don't remember much about their marriage, but I do remember the fights and tension in the house before they split. Mom caught him with another woman at a hotel when she surprised him during one of his frequent business trips. She filed for divorce immediately and got full custody since Dad moved to another state for work opportunities right after. Growing up, Dad would visit maybe 3 to 4 times a year and call occasionally. He always had excuses for why he couldn't visit more. Work was busy, he was dealing with health issues, his car needed repairs, etc. He would send the required child support, but it was often late, and he frequently claimed he was struggling financially when Mom asked for help with extra expenses. Money was always tight in our house. Mom worked as a nurse and picked up extra shifts at a nursing home just to keep us afloat. I started working at the local grocery store when I was 16 to help with bills. I remember feeling so embarrassed having to wear second-hand clothes and not being able to join school activities that cost money. Meanwhile, Dad would sometimes send $50 for birthdays or Christmas but claim he couldn't help with bigger expenses like when I needed braces or when our heating broke one winter. I managed to put myself through community college while working full-time. I wanted to transfer to a 4-year university but couldn't afford it even with student loans. When I asked Dad for help with tuition, he sent a long email about his own financial struggles, medical bills, bad investments, supporting his elderly parents, and how sorry he was that he couldn't help more. I ended up getting an associate's degree and was lucky to land an entry-level IT job that paid decent money. Over the past few years, as I became more financially stable, I tried rebuilding a relationship with Dad. He had moved back to our state after supposedly retiring due to health issues, and we started meeting for dinner every few weeks. He seemed genuinely interested in my life and career, and I thought we were finally developing the father-son relationship I'd always wanted. He would talk about regretting not being around more when I was younger and wanting to make up for lost time. Everything changed 3 months ago. Dad got a new smartphone and asked for my help setting it up since I work in IT. While I was syncing his email accounts, I noticed several messages from a university's financial aid office about tuition payments. I didn't mean to snoop, but the amount mentioned was substantial and I was curious since Dad had always claimed to be struggling financially. When I opened the email, I discovered he had been paying full tuition at an expensive private university for someone named Lucia, 19F. There were multiple emails about payment plans, housing fees, and meal plans. Confused, I opened more emails and found earlier ones about high school tuition payments to a private prep school. As I dug deeper, the truth came out. Lucia was my half-sister, his daughter from another relationship. She was born just a year after my parents' divorce, meaning Dad had gotten another woman pregnant while still married to my mom. He had been fully supporting Lucia and her mother all these years while claiming he could barely afford child support for me. When I confronted him, he tried to deny it at first but finally admitted everything when I showed him the emails. The extent of his deception was staggering. Not only had he paid for Lucia's private school education since kindergarten, but also expensive extracurriculars like horseback riding lessons and summer camps abroad. She got a brand new car for her 16th birthday while I was taking the bus to work at her age. He had bought a house for her and her mother in an upscale neighborhood while my mom and I lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. What hurt most was learning that Lucia knew about me the whole time. Dad and her mother had told her she had a half-brother but instructed her to keep it secret. She and Dad had a full, normal father-daughter relationship. He attended her school events, took her on vacations, taught her to drive, while I barely saw him a few times a year. When I asked why he never told me about her, he claimed he was trying to protect me from being hurt and didn't want to complicate things with my mom. He tried justifying himself saying he did his best to support both families but had to prioritize certain things. I was too angry to listen to his excuses. I told him I never wanted to see or speak to him again and blocked his number. When I told my mom everything, she broke down crying. She revealed that Dad had spent years claiming he couldn't afford to pay more child support because of various financial hardships, all lies to hide the fact that he was supporting his other family in luxury. She's now talking to a lawyer about pursuing legal action for his years of deception about his finances. Some of my extended family members are saying I'm being too harsh. My aunt thinks I should try to forgive him since he's still my father and is getting older. Several cousins have suggested I should at least try to have a relationship with Lucia since she's innocent in all this. But I'm too hurt and angry to even consider it right now. Every time I think about all the years of struggling while he was giving her everything, it makes my blood boil. Ida for cutting him off completely? Part of me feels guilty for refusing to even hear him out, but another part feels like this betrayal is unforgivable. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if my anger is justified. Edit. Thank you everyone for the supportive comments. To clarify some questions that keep coming up, yes, I have documented proof of the tuition payments and other financial support through the emails and financial records. No, I haven't tried contacting Lucia directly yet. While I understand she didn't choose any of this, I'm not emotionally ready to open that door right now. Update 1: The situation has gotten even more complicated since my last post. After sharing what happened, several relatives started reaching out with their own revelations. Apparently, many of them had suspected something wasn't right with Dad's stories over the years but weren't completely sure. A couple of my cousins mentioned seeing Dad with a young woman at malls or restaurants over the years but assumed she was a friend's daughter or a relative they didn't know. The biggest revelation came from my Aunt Karen, Dad's sister. She called me crying last week and finally admitted she had known about Lucia the entire time. Not only did she know, but she had been actively involved in Lucia's life, attending her dance recitals, high school graduation, and family events. She even hosted birthday parties for Lucia at her house when I was younger, scheduling them carefully so I wouldn't find out. Karen showed me photos from these events, and it was gut-wrenching to see Dad being the perfect father to Lucia while I barely saw him. There were pictures of him teaching her to ride a bike, helping with science fair projects, and taking her on camping trips, all things I had wished for growing up. Karen said she kept quiet at Dad's insistence, claiming it was for the best to keep the family separate. She's now racked with guilt after seeing how much their deception hurt me. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. A few days after Karen's confession, I received a message through my cousin's Facebook account. It was from Lucia. She had somehow found my original Reddit post and recognized the situation. According to her, she had always known about me and had wanted to reach out for years, but Dad strictly forbade it. What she revealed next made everything even worse. Dad had apparently been telling her and her mom a completely different version of the story all these years. In his narrative, my mom and I had rejected any attempts at connection after the divorce. He claimed we wanted nothing to do with his new family and that I specifically had refused to meet Lucia multiple times. All lies, of course. I never even knew she existed until now. Lucia shared financial details that made my blood boil. Dad hadn't just paid for her education, he had bought her mom a $500,000 house in an upscale neighborhood when Lucia was born. He paid for yearly family vacations to Europe and Hawaii, bought them both new cars every few years, and even invested $200,000 to help her mom start a successful interior design business that now earns well into six figures. All of this happened during the same years he was claiming poverty to reduce his child support payments to my mom. The same years my mom had to declare bankruptcy due to medical bills after a car accident. The same time I was working at a grocery store instead of joining school sports because we couldn't afford the equipment. Finding out about this level of financial deception made me physically sick. Lucia sent me dozens of photos showing how involved Dad was in her life. There he was at every school play, every soccer game, which he coached, every father-daughter dance. They took annual father-daughter trips to Disney World, a place I had begged to visit as a kid but was told we couldn't afford. She had photos of elaborate birthday parties, Christmas mornings surrounded by expensive gifts, and family portraits that looked like something out of a magazine. She was horrified to learn about our struggles and how Dad had lied to everyone. She broke down in our messages, apologizing repeatedly for her unwitting part in the deception. She said she had always dreamed of having a brother and felt terrible about having everything handed to her while I struggled. After several long conversations through Facebook, she asked if we could meet in person. I was extremely conflicted about meeting her. Part of me was angry and jealous of the life she had, even though logically I knew none of it was her fault. But another part was curious about this sister I never knew I had. After thinking it over for a few days, I agreed to meet her for coffee, figuring I at least owed her a chance to talk. We met yesterday at a local coffee shop and ended up talking for almost 4 hours. Despite my initial reservations, Lucia turned out to be genuinely sweet and down to earth. We discovered we have similar interests in technology and gaming, and even share the same bizarre sense of humor. It was strange seeing little mannerisms and expressions that reminded me of Dad. She cried when I told her detailed stories about growing up, about missing school field trips because we couldn't afford them, about working instead of going to prom, about having to drop out of college because of finances. She had no idea about any of it and was furious with Dad for the deception. She told me she had already confronted him about everything she learned from my post. That confrontation apparently led to Dad's latest attempts at damage control. He showed up unannounced at my apartment last night with a check for $100,000, claiming he wanted to make things right. When I refused to accept it, he broke down crying, saying he never meant to hurt me and wanted a chance to fix things. He talked about wanting both his children in his life and how we could be a real family now that everything was in the open. I told him to leave and haven't responded to any of his numerous emails and voicemails since then. He keeps sending long messages about how sorry he is and how much he loves both his children, but all I can think about are the years of lies and abandonment while he played perfect father to Lucia. Lucia and I have exchanged numbers and are cautiously getting to know each other. While I'm still processing my feelings about everything, I don't blame her for Dad's choices. But I'm nowhere near ready to forgive him, regardless of how much money he throws at the situation now. Update 2. Just when I thought this situation couldn't get more twisted, everything has exploded in ways I never imagined. Lucia and I had been talking regularly over the past few weeks, trying to piece together the timeline of Dad's lies. Some things weren't adding up about his supposed business trips and financial situation, so Lucia hired a private investigator to look into it. What the pie uncovered was staggering. Dad has a third family we knew nothing about. Another daughter, Emma, 15F, living in Colorado with her mother. The Pi found regular monthly payments to a woman named Rebecca dating back 16 years, plus school records and social media photos showing Dad with another teenage daughter who looks exactly like him. The Pi also uncovered years of financial records showing Dad maintained 3 completely separate lives. He had different credit cards and bank accounts for each family, carefully managing his schedule to spend time with each one without raising suspicion. He would tell Lucia and her mom he was on business trips while visiting Emma and Rebecca, then tell them he was at conferences while visiting me or Lucia. When Lucia confronted him with the evidence, Dad initially tried denying it but finally broke down and admitted everything. He's been maintaining 3 separate households for years, lying to everyone about his whereabouts and finances. Emma and Rebecca had no idea about Lucia or me either. Dad had told them the same lies about having to travel frequently for work. But here's where it gets even worse. The Pi discovered Dad didn't actually retire last year like he claimed. He was fired from his executive position at his company for embezzlement. He had been stealing company funds for years through fake vendor accounts and inflated expense reports to support his multiple secret families. His supposedly modest retirement savings were actually stolen money he had managed to hide before getting caught. This explains how he afforded everything while claiming poverty to reduce my child support. He wasn't struggling financially at all. He was stealing millions from his employer to fund his 3 separate lives. The company had started an internal investigation last year after finding financial irregularities, which led to his termination. He covered it up by claiming he chose to retire for health reasons. Now that his fraud has been exposed and the money supply has dried up, he's desperately trying to maintain relationships with his children. He's been sending increasingly frantic messages to both Lucia and me, talking about family loyalty and forgiveness. He even tried guilt-tripping Lucia about the private investigator, saying she betrayed him by digging into his private life. Lucia shared all the Pi's findings with me and Emma's mom Rebecca. Rebecca was completely blindsided. Dad had told her he was a widower when they met. She had no idea he had 2 other families he was supporting with stolen money. She's devastated and has cut off all contact with him, though she said Emma is struggling to process everything. The company Dad worked for is now conducting a full criminal investigation into the embezzlement. Lucia and I have both been contacted by corporate investigators and have turned over all the financial records and emails we have. Mom's lawyer says this new evidence of fraud significantly strengthens her case for retroactive child support since Dad was clearly lying about his financial situation for years. Some extended family are still trying to defend Dad, saying he must have been under tremendous pressure trying to support 3 families. Others suggest he might have mental health issues that drove him to create these separate lives. But Lucia and I have both cut contact completely. The level of calculation and deception required to maintain this scheme for so many years shows this wasn't just poor judgment, it was deliberate and sustained fraud. Dad's been sending messages through every possible channel begging us not to cooperate with the investigation, claiming it will ruin his life if we turn over evidence. He's trying to convince us that he only did it all for his children, that everything he stole was to give us better lives. But Lucia and I both agree, we're done covering for his lies. We've provided everything we have to the investigators and are prepared to testify if needed. The strangest part of all this is that through this horrible situation, Lucia and I have actually grown closer. We talk almost daily now, supporting each other as we deal with the fallout of Dad's deception. We're both angry and hurt, but at least we have each other to lean on through this mess. Update 3: The final chapter of this nightmare has played out. Dad was arrested last week after a lengthy investigation. He's facing multiple felony charges for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. The investigators found he had stolen over $2 million from his company over 15 years through an elaborate scheme of fake vendors, inflated expenses, and hidden accounts. The details that came out during the investigation were shocking. Dad had created a network of shell companies to funnel money through, using fake invoices and doctored expense reports. He maintained separate phones, email accounts, and even fake business cards for his different identities. The level of planning that went into maintaining this deception is almost unbelievable. The company's forensic audit revealed he had been stealing steadily larger amounts each year to keep up with the increasing expenses of 3 families. Private schools, luxury vacations, cars, houses, it all added up to millions. He even had separate life insurance policies listing each family as beneficiaries, each unaware of the other's existence. Dad's lawyer reached out to Lucia and me last week, asking us to write character witness statements for his sentencing hearing. He's hoping for leniency by showing he only stole to support his children. We both refused. The lawyer tried guilt-tripping us, saying Dad is facing 15 to 20 years in prison and needs his children's support. But we've had enough of the manipulation. Rebecca and Emma have also cut all contact. Emma initially struggled with the revelation, but after learning the full scope of Dad's crimes, she wants nothing to do with him. Rebecca is focused on protecting Emma's college fund, which might be seized as proceeds of crime. Lucia and I have both reached out to offer support, but they're not ready for contact with us yet. The only positive outcome from this mess is the genuine sibling relationship Lucia and I have developed. We've helped each other process the anger and betrayal, sharing stories and realizing how Dad manipulated us all differently. We try to meet for dinner weekly now and are slowly building the kind of sibling bond we should have had all along. Mom's lawsuit for retroactive child support was successful. The judge ordered Dad to pay substantial back support plus penalties from his remaining assets. Most of that money is frozen or will be seized by authorities, but Mom feels vindicated after years of being gaslit about Dad's finances. She's finally been able to let go of the guilt she carried for not being able to provide more for me growing up. Extended family members keep pushing us to forgive Dad, saying he's still our father and facing serious prison time. Some have even suggested we help him financially with legal fees. But Lucia and I both agree, we're done. His choices destroyed 3 families, traumatized his children, and hurt countless others through his crimes. The fact that he's still trying to manipulate us through his lawyer shows he hasn't really changed. I've started therapy to process everything, and it's helping me understand that none of this was my fault. I didn't cause Dad's absence by being somehow unworthy of his love. He made deliberate choices to create and maintain multiple secret lives. Lucia and I are focusing on healing and moving forward with our new sibling relationship, leaving Dad and his web of lies in the past where they belong. For those asking, no, I don't regret exposing everything, even though it led to Dad's arrest. His crimes would have come to light eventually, and his choices are what landed him in this situation, not his children's refusal to keep lying for him.